We have a full house, so if you have a spare seat next to you, please let somebody know if they're looking for a seat. Thank you very much. Now, we were to start at 9:45. The reason for the delay is that as I speak to you, the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, is giving an interview on LBC, and he's due to be with us at 10 minutes past 10. Whether he will be with us at 10 minutes past 10 is open to debate, but if at 10 minutes past 10 I get out a banjo and start to play, you'll know he's not quite here yet, but anyway, we'll start now. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second Construction, Logistics and Cyclist Safety Conference held under the auspices of Transport for London. Now, the purpose of today's event is firstly to deliver a progress report on what's already been achieved since the initial TfL CLOCS conference was held in May. Some of you may have been at that conference. Secondly, it's to provide an overview of the next steps planned within the current TfL two-year programme of work. Now, before delivering my opening remarks as your chairman, I'm going to give you some housekeeping announcements. Firstly, mobile phones. Could you please switch them off? You need to give your speakers your full attention this morning, and of course, as a courtesy to your fellow delegates. Now, in the event of a fire, an announcement over the PA system will tell you to evacuate the building immediately. There are two designated fire escape stairs, the east and the west, which ultimately exit the building at ground level. And you'll see the green man on that one. On leaving the building, the assembly point is in Potters Field Park, which is adjacent to City Hall. At the entrance to each fire escape stairs, there's a lobby, which is a designated safe haven. And if for any reason you're unable to leave the building by the stairs, please wait in this area, and a member of the GLA Facilities and Squares Management Team or the Fire Brigade will come for you. Trust me, they will come for you. Please note, City Hall is a non-smoking building. The toilets are located cunningly under the sign that says toilets, and we're looking to end a little while after 1 o'clock for lunch. Now, before introducing your first speaker, the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, who I am reliably informed is on his way, I'd just like to say a few words myself concerning the many issues circulating around the current logistics and cycle safety debate. Before I do that, just briefly, if there's any member of the media who's interested in filming or looking at the Lang O'Rourke HGV vehicle outside City Hall, following Sir Peter's speech, there'll be an opportunity to take a look at it with members of the TfL press office. And now to the subject of today. If you'd have asked me 6 months ago whether we were moving towards a resolution of reducing the number of collisions between cyclists and heavy goods vehicles in London, I'd have been fairly optimistic in my response. However, following the deaths of 6 cyclists within 14 days in London, involving not just HGVs but PSVs too, if you were to have asked me the same question immediately after those incidents, I certainly wouldn't have felt as optimistic, and I suspect that many others in the room would have shared that level of disquiet. Following those tragic incidents, there's been plenty of solutions proffered by commentators, interest groups, legislators and journalists. There's also been plenty of heated finger-pointing encouraged by the media between HGV drivers and cyclists regarding each other's behaviour on the road. Somewhat naively, I had hoped that we'd got beyond that stage by now, and I say that for 2 specific reasons. Firstly, because there is no single magic bullet to this problem. The answer lies in the hands of many individuals, several organisations, and certainly not one particular group of road users. Secondly, as the CLOCS project description quite rightly says, it's widely recognised that multiple interventions are required to significantly reduce the risks HGVs pose to cyclists and other road users. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe this problem will only be solved successfully through multiple interventions and multiple solutions, where everyone plays their part and where all road users take ownership of road safety. And meanwhile, whenever there are a number of related deaths in highly emotive circumstances, it frequently elicits the twin cries of, "How could this have happened?" usually followed by, "Something needs to be done." A perfectly natural response, I'm sure you would all agree. However, when public safety is involved, there's also sometimes a perception that when there's more than one death, or when incidents keep occurring, that nothing is being done to prevent further tragedies. Well, when it comes to reducing collisions between commercial vehicles and cyclists in London, let me assure you, an enormous amount of work has already been done on a number of fronts, including the latest standard for construction logistics, which you'll see a copy of today, and you'll hear more about today. And a lot more will be done over the coming months to prevent further deaths, not just by TfL, but by many other contributing parties, stakeholders and individuals. And you'll hear that point not only emphasised by both the Mayor and the Commissioner for Transport in just a moment, but also in the presentations you'll hear from the working groups whose participants include the construction industry, truck operators, academic industry and research institutions, the trade associations, vehicle manufacturers, safety equipment suppliers, government, regulatory and enforcement bodies. So any perception of inaction or dithering on this issue would be very wide of the mark. The safety of vulnerable road users has been high on the agenda of TfL from as far back as 2007, and its commitment to road safety has been both continually repeated and reinforced since that time by two mayors of London, first Ken Livingstone and now Boris Johnson. And the Mayor's presence with us this morning when he arrives will underpin his own commitment to making London's roads safer. Today you'll hear a lot about how TfL is working with others to deliver practical and above all else workable solutions. And yet, in the space of 9 days, 6 lives have been lost. And based on provisional figures, and I must stress that these are provisional figures, the number of deaths of cyclists in London so far looks to be the same as the whole of 2012. No wonder then that people are saying something needs to be done. It does. But rushing to implement ill-thought-out interventions will be, I believe, as counterproductive as ignoring the work that's already been done and is scheduled to be done through the CLOCS project. When a cyclist is in collision with a truck or a bus, the chances of them being seriously injured or worse are high. We know that. That's the bit we can all grasp. What's not so easy to grasp is how to allow truck operators to continue to feed the freight demands of the nation's capital while sharing the road safety with an ever-increasing number of cyclists. There are plenty of answers to the problem, as I've said, being suggested already, but each comes with its own checks and balances, its pros and cons, its own caveats. If I can give you just one example concerning the recent calls for a blanket ban on all HGV deliveries during peak rush hour periods. Get rid of every truck during rush hour and you certainly remove the risk of cyclists being in collision with one during that busy period. Except that it won't stop collisions between cyclists and large passenger-carrying vehicles like buses and coaches. Are we suggesting that we get rid of them too during rush hour? Ban trucks during peak periods and you also create a situation where there'll be more commercial vehicles on the road in a far more compressed time frame, which does nothing for congestion or frustration. And what if you plan to cycle during that period as well? London is a living, breathing entity. I'm sure we all understand that. It needs to be fed 24/7, 365 days a year by road freight. And under the Mayor's vision for growth, that includes building new sustainable housing, new businesses, new infrastructure, all providing more employment, greater prosperity and a better quality of life for hundreds of thousands of Londoners. And all that will need a lot of construction and a lot of trucks. The good news is that it is possible to reduce the number of peak time deliveries by trucks through more out-of-hours deliveries. And TfL's Freight and Fleet team is working very hard with the trade associations to square the circle between the needs of transport operators to make those deliveries during out-of-peak time periods with the needs and concerns of the London boroughs and local residents. If the barrier is noise, we have quiet delivery trucks. A Euro 6 articulated truck emits half the perceived noise of a similar truck of 20 years ago. It can be done. Truck bans aren't the answer to this problem any more than finger pointing. The only way to approach it is for every single interested party to come together to answer this simple question: what can we all do together to reduce cycling road deaths and injuries? Above all else, we need to carry on with the work being conducted through the CLOCS project. It's very important. We need to stay on track, delivering solutions based on robust, irrefutable evidence that they will work in real life, that they will save lives and support London as a vibrant, growing city, both socially and economically. We all accept there is an imperative to solve this problem and solve it quickly. But we must always remember that whatever changes we make, whatever solutions we back, whatever interventions we adopt, they must be based on robustly tested evidence. Because if ever a problem demanded an evidence-based approach, this is it. When it comes to cycle safety, we have to get it right and get it right first time. Ill-conceived measures, however well-intentioned, that do little to stop the toll in road deaths will, I contend and fear, only lead to even more frustration, suspicion and finger-pointing across the entire road-using community. And finally, as we seek those solutions, be they changes to existing vehicles or introducing new vehicle designs, greater safety awareness training for drivers and cyclists, tougher enforcement, redesign roads, when the debate gets overheated, as it surely will based on our current experience, we must all stop and remind ourselves what the end game is here. It's to save lives and to end the suffering and heartbreak caused by the loss of a loved one. And if we can always remember that, then together we can solve this desperately worrying problem. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you very much, Brian. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to City Hall. How many people came here by bicycle, can I ask? Put your hands up. Don't be shy. Well, I'm Philip Pank of the Times. Anybody else? Right. Got work to do. But never mind. Thank you very much for coming along. I want to thank Brian and everybody in the freight operators for what they're doing to support us. And, of course, I want to thank Sir Peter Hendy, who will be speaking in just minutes. Peter has been working over many years to make cycling safer for everybody in our city. I think we've reached a very important moment in the development of transport in London, because there are loads of people now, a growing chorus of voices, who are saying that the cycle revolution has been going too fast and that we should somehow get all these pesky cyclists off the roads. And is there anybody here who shares that sentiment? Good. Because there are some people who look at me in an accusing way, as though they hold me personally responsible. So I obliged to reply by saying, first of all, that this analysis grossly exaggerates my messianic abilities. I am a passionate cyclist, but I am not some kind of pied peddler encouraging people to do it simply by the force of example. People go by bike in London because they love to go by bike in London, because it is clean, it is green, it is beautiful, it's enjoyable, and it is the way to go for our city. And I want London to be famous, not just as the financial capital of the world, the artistic and cultural capital of the world. I think our streets should be as famous for cycling and as popular with cyclists as the streets of Copenhagen or of Amsterdam. And that means we must make the experience ever safer. Wherever accidents happen, we must respond and we must see what could have been done to prevent them, and we must immediately work out what we can do to stop them happening again. We must address people's fears, well-founded or otherwise. And at this point, it is very important to repeat. Cycling is in London, and I pay tribute again to the work of TfL and many others. Cycling in London is getting safer. The rate of serious and fatal collisions has fallen by about a quarter in the last decade. There were fewer people killed cycling on our roads in the last 5 years than there were in the 5 years before that, in spite of the massive increase in the number of people on push bikes in London. And yet people say to me, quite rightly, what are we doing to educate all these people who want to cycle? and who don't have much preparatory experience. So let me tell you, because I don't think it is widely enough known, that we have launched a cycle safety tips campaign, which is already proving very popular. We've so far funded training for 8,723 adults and 38,743 children, and that is obviously just the beginning. Yes, folks, and obviously this audience is a relevant one for these remarks, since none of you have come in by bike except for Philip Bank at the Times. If you want to learn to ride in London, and if you are apprehensive, then we will certainly do what we can to help you. And then, of course, people say, and this is directly relevant to what Brian has been saying this morning and to our discussions later on, people say, well, what about the lorries? What about the HGVs that are so dominant in some of these accident statistics? And I say, well, yes, of course. We are working very, very hard to drive up safety standards for all vehicles. All lorries contracted to TfL, to the GLA or our supply chains will have sidebars, audible and visual warnings, driver training, the special mirrors that they need, all the ways that you would think commonsensical to reduce the risk of collision with a cyclist. And as you know, consulting with the Department of Transport, working with the industry, we are moving now towards a new, safer lorry zone for London. And together with the Department for Transport, we've launched an HGV task force that is targeting the bad operators, none of whom, of course, are represented here this morning. I mean that seriously. We're targeting the bad operators and the people with dangerous machines. So far, we have fined 243 and actually impounded 14 HGVs. And then people say, well, all that's fine. I understand what you're doing on education. Obviously, we need to do more. And I understand what you're trying to do to make lorries physically safer. And I understand some of the arguments that you've already heard from Brian about the difficulty of having a complete ban on lorries during the peak. And people say, all that may be fine, but what about the behaviour of the road users? What about the behaviour of the motorists and indeed the cyclists? And what are you doing to tackle cyclists and motorists who disobey the laws of the road? Which is why I'm very grateful to Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, the Metropolitan Police, for the Operation Safeway that they've launched in the last few weeks, in which no fewer than 755 cyclists have been fined, a sight to gladden the heart, for offences such as jumping the red lights. And before you accuse me of picking on cyclists, let me assure you that we have also fined 1,392 motorists for offences such as talking on their mobile phones or indeed jumping red lights. And then there is the fundamental question. How do you modernise? How do you continue to make cycling safer by modernising London's essentially medieval road layout, or in many cases medieval road layout, to take account of the conflicting demands of these road users? So let me repeat what you all know, that we are spending the thick end of £1 billion on creating better infrastructure on our roads for all road users. Just in the next few months, we are setting out a programme to make 33 junctions safer. We are publishing the map of our new network of quiet ways across Zone 1, many of them following the lines of the Tube map. And I'm very grateful, by the way, I should say, for all the work that has been done on this and many other schemes by our cycling commissioner, the Cycling Commissioner for London, Andrew Gilligan. We're getting on with the mini Hollands in the outer London boroughs, creating those. I don't say that they're going to be areas where you'll find kind of coffee shops selling dubious substances or tulips or what have you, but there will be wonderful places for cycling. We're getting on with those programmes in outer London. New safety schemes are starting up in Bexley Heath and in Twickenham. We will continue to expand and improve the cycle superhighways because I believe in them passionately. And yes, where it is possible and where it is sensible, we will have segregation on those routes as we have done at Stratford. But as everybody knows, we cannot conceivably hope to do that systematically. We cannot conceivably hope in a city like London to do that everywhere. And by 2015, I hope we will have begun work on the great east-west cycle superhighway, the biggest continuous urban cycle route in Europe, about 15 miles long, going all the way from the city through to Ealing. London's cycle revolution will continue, and it will accelerate. This is emphatically not time to slacken off or to give up, because I think that if we get it right, the prize is huge. London should be, in all relevant respects, a perfect city in which to ride a bike. We have a broadly flat, gently undulating landscape. I don't know why all you guys are so put off. It's absolutely fantastic. There's hardly a hill in sight. It's much less hilly than Paris, by the way. Much less hilly. We've got a beautiful spaces to cycle in. We have more green space in London, more parks, more beautiful views than any other city in Europe. We have perfect temperate weather in which to cycle. And if we can get Londoners onto their bicycles, encourage people to get onto bicycles, we can take the pressure off our public transport, off our mass transit systems. We can reduce congestion, we can reduce vehicular traffic, and I believe we can help people to be fitter, to be calmer, to be less hassled, to be irritatingly optimistic when they arrive at the office, and generally happier, and enable them to enjoy the glories of our city every day in a new way. That's the ambition. That's what we want to achieve. That is the goal. There is a huge amount of work to be done. It will take time, it will take patience, it will take humility and a willingness on all of our parts to learn from experience and to learn from where we have gone wrong. It will also take considerable sums of investment. But with your help, I have absolutely no doubt that it can be done, and above all, that it must be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, as the Mayor departs, we're now going to hear from the man whose job it is to turn that vision into reality, whose job it is all about implementing the strategy, not only with regard to the work done